Well, hello, kiddies. It's your old pal, John Cassier, the voice of the Crypt Keeper from Tales from the Crypt. And you're listening to the Don't Go Out There Horror Movie Review podcast. Lights, camera, action!
I'm so scared.
In a world where zombies, ghosts, serial killers, and vampires all exist, welcome to the Don't Go Out There Horror Movie Podcast.
Back, everybody, to Don't Go Out There Horror Movie Review Podcast. First of all, I just want to say appreciate everyone who's been listening to us, sticking with us. It's truly an honor for me to work with these three fine gentlemen. I truly have a good time doing this. I really appreciate it. Just wanted to say that off the rip. Tonight we're doing another different type of horror movie. We've the past three films we've kind of done different stuff, which has been kind of fun. This is another movie that I haven't seen personally until this past week. This is the 1999 Blair Witch Project, and yes, Jeremy Ireland, it's 1999. I apologize for saying 1994. I said the wrong thing. But general thoughts, honestly, I'll get deeper into my rating or review later. Wasn't a huge fan of the movie. I get its effect on the culture, the genre, horror in general. I get the effect it had, but to me, I was not a huge fan. But Brian, what's your general thoughts on this film?
If you give me just a second, I'll get a little bit deep here for you. But like, in my opinion, I think that horror is traditionally about confronting like your darkest fears. And I think Blair Witch doesn't do that. Instead, it shows us other people confronting theirs. I think there are three types of people that when it comes to this movie. There's one, people that get motion sickness really easily are going to hate this movie, period. Like, they're going to hate it. And I think the other two types of people, there's like me, the people who grew up then, saw the movie then, and was part of the whole hysteria, and it kind of gave it an aura and added something to the film that, you know, isn't real. And that's something that this movie has to have. And I realized that upon rewatching it. And the other type of people are younger people who, you might fall into this category, but it's the people who grew up hearing the hype of this film but knew that it's not real, and then watch it and you're just like, is that it? That's it? Nothing really happened. But so it's just, I think, the way that you look at it. Like I said, I fall into the second category where I grew up in it, and I really appreciate it for being the period piece that it was.
Yeah, that's a good point, Brian. Go ahead, Mike. Give us your general thoughts.
Man, it's almost like, shocker, I know, but it's kind of almost like Brian and me have the same brain. Okay. And what I mean by that is we kind of have the same view on this movie. Is very divisive, not in a bad way, but just the way people view this film is very divisive. Like Brian said, you could be put in probably three different categories. And I fall in the latter that you mentioned, Brian, where I know the hype. I knew the hype around the movie. I'd seen bits and pieces, but again, I was a giant puss as a younger person. And so I didn't see this movie until later, after 2007 rolled around. So I was excited to see it because of all the hype. I'm like, well, now I'm not going to be scared. Let's go. I expected something else, but I could still kind of appreciate its impact on horror. I don't hate this movie. I say that a lot, I know, but I don't love this movie either because it is slow. I like a good slow burn, but it is very, very, very slow. It's not slow with its camera movements, which I'm sure we'll talk about, but it's slow in all the other ways. So again, I don't hate it. It definitely changed horror for good or bad, or however you want to look at it. It's definitely one of those genre impact movies. When you think about genre impact, you think Halloween, you think, the Poltergeist, Exorcist, Amityville, those kind of movies, like those impactful movies. This is kind of one of those. It's not the first found footage movie, There's Cannibal Holocaust and other movies before it, but it definitely was the first one that really blew up.
Oh yeah, definitely. Go ahead, Drew.
Uh, I was the one of the ones that I remember when it come out. I remember when this movie come out, and just the insane amount of hype that was coming in with this movie when it came out. It made I wanted to see it, because I've always been a horror fan, so I was like, man, I can't wait to see this. Can't wait to see this. Got opening night tickets, went and seen it when they finally put it out there, and watched it, and big letdown. Big letdown. And then mostly for me, the reason why it was a big letdown for me is just because of the camera movement. It was just too much for me. I couldn't focus really on the storyline. I couldn't focus on what the characters were talking about, what they were doing, what was going on. There's a lot of stuff that just kind of took me out of the movie because of that. But at the time, the hype around it was just insane. It was insane at that time. But overall, I like the movie. And if you really kind of dissect the plot line, it's actually a pretty good movie. It definitely changed the film. There's a bunch of films that spawned off of this, the found footage genre. You got VHS, you got a couple of other ones I can't remember off the top of my head right now, but
Paranormal Activity.
definitely changed a lot. But and then they actually improved upon.
I was going to say
them.
Part of this movie's weakness is that this is done better later. To me.
Oh yes.
There's definitely some better found footage movies that come out later, but that's hindsight. I know, but it hurts it in hindsight where there's definitely some really good found footage movies out there that do it a little bit better than this one does.
Well, it's a lot easier to piggyback off somebody that done it first, the first pioneer of it, than say,
Halloween 78, Halloween 78 I love, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you there's not better just pure movies from filmmaking, from a technical, from all that stuff standpoint. But Halloween is just kind of special. It was The Godfather. This is kind of The Godfather of found footage outside of Hannibal Holocaust.
Well, where you can say, even 2016 Blair Witch does better in a lot of aspects than this does. This movie, you can just say it hits different at home than it was at the theater. It hits different when there's not hype around it than it did back in the 90s. Yep. But you can't say that, to me, you can't say that about 2016 Blair Witch, because that came out after all this stuff, no hype, everybody knows the internet, that all the the opposite of what happened here, and I think it hits perfect. I love that movie.
Oh yeah, no, it's a much better movie to me.
I haven't seen 16. I know Brian told me I need to see it. I'm going to get to watching it.
I think you would like it, Nico.
I do too.
But tonight we're going to try a little different format, because the scene by scene, I think all of us kind of agreed that it wasn't really the right way to break this movie down scene by scene, because it's kind of just a cluster to me. It just kind of just is one big scene. So we're going to let the producer Drew. He's going to kind of read off a summary, and we're going to just give our thoughts on some aspects of the movie. Go ahead, Drew, with that summary.
All right, y'all can bear with me here. It's a little bit. I want to try to get through it quickly. Basically, in October of '94, film students Heather, Mike, and Josh set out to produce a documentary about the fabled Blair Witch. So they traveled to Burkittsville, Maryland, interview residents about the legend. Locals tell them of Rustin Parr, a hermit who lived in the woods and kidnapped 7 children in the 40s, supposedly killing all of them on the orders of the witch. After spending the night at a motel, the students explored the woods in North Burkittsville to research the legend. Along the way, they met 2 fishermen, one of whom warns them that the woods are haunted. He also tells them of a young girl named Robin Weaver, who went missing in 1888. When she returned 3 days later, she talked about an old woman whose feet never touched the ground. His companion, however, is skeptical of the story. The students hiked to Coffin Rock, where 5 men were found ritualistically murdered in the 19th century. Their bodies later disappeared. The group camps for the night. They moved deeper into the woods the next day and locate what appears to be an old cemetery with 7 small cairns and set up camp nearby. That night, they hear the sound of twigs snapping from all directions, but assume that the noises are from animals or locals. The following day, they try to hike back to the car, but are unable to find it before dark and make camp. They again hear twigs snapping at night, but fail to find the source of the noises. In the morning, they find that 3 have been built around their tent during the night, which unnerves them. As they continue, Heather learns her map is missing. Mike later reveals he kicked it into the creek the previous day out of frustration, which prompts Heather and Josh to attack him in a rage. They realize they are now lost and decide to head south, using Mike's compass to guide them. They eventually reach a section where they discover a multitude of humanoid stick figures suspended from trees. They again hear sounds that night, including those of children laughing, among other strange noises. After an unknown force shakes the tent, they flee in panic and hide in the woods until dawn. Upon returning to their tent, they find that their possessions have been rifled through and Josh's equipment is covered with slime. As they continue, they come across a log on a river identical to one they crossed earlier. They realize they have walked in a circle, despite thinking they traveled south all day and once again make camp. Josh then suffers a breakdown while holding the camera, taunting Heather for their circumstances and her constant recording of the events. Josh disappears the next morning, and Heather and Mike try in vain to find him before slowly proceeding. That night, they hear Josh's agonized screams in the darkness, but are unable to locate him. Mike and Heather then theorize that Josh's screams are a fabrication by the witch to draw them out of their tent. The next day, outside her tent, Heather discovers a bundle of sticks tied with a piece of fabric from Josh's shirt. As she searches through it, she finds blood-soaked scraps of Josh's shirt as well as teeth, hair, and what appears to be a piece of his tongue. Although distraught by the discovery, she chooses not to tell Mike. That night, Heather records herself apologizing to her family and to Mike's and Josh's family, taking full responsibility for their predicament. They again hear Josh's agonized cries for help and follow them to a derelict, abandoned house containing demonic symbols and children's bloody handprints on the wall. Mike races upstairs to find Josh while Heather follows. Mike says he hears Josh in the basement. He runs downstairs while hysterical Heather struggles to keep up. Upon reaching the basement, an unseen force attacks Mike, causing him to drop his camera and go silent. Heather enters the basement screaming, and her camera captures Mike facing a corner. Suddenly, the same unseen force attacks Heather, causing her to drop her camera and go silent as well. And then the footage ends. That's why we couldn't break this down.
That's why you can't do it scene by scene, because it's really just kind of one long run-on scene. And so you're right. That was actually a good idea. I'm glad we didn't try to do scene by scene. You did a good job, Drew, in my opinion.
Hopefully, didn't nobody fall asleep.
No, you're good.
Oh, no, you're good, brother.
So, okay, we kind of have, like Nico mentioned, we have a different format. We're going to kind of go around and talk about a few points of the movie and the marketing campaign, the hype, and all the other stuff that we have to talk about. So, I guess I'll go first since the thing you sent me had me go first. So the marketing was huge. The marketing was this movie, okay? And so you got to remember 1998 when they're hyping this movie, going into 1999, the internet is not what we have here today where I can call you and look at you and we can talk about this movie. It was very still in it. It's not brand new, but in its infancy. And so
most people had dial up.
Like,
yes.
Winding up like an old phone. So, but there was a website. It was really the first viral movie campaign ever, as far as that goes. So it broke ground there. They did a great job with it. You could go to the website and you could research facts about what happened. You could look at journals and diaries from Heather. I mean, they even talked about, the parents of these actresses and actors got grievance cards, sympathy cards about these three dying. And look, they put up missing flyers. There's just a lot of secrecy about the movie, and they did a really good job marketing. And I don't know if if they didn't do that, this movie would have done as well. Because again, the hype probably, and I can understand if you're going to see this for the first time, and you're not like a true horror fan like us, you just hear the hype. The hype had to deal in how you felt about this movie. Like if you really loved this movie, the marketing was definitely the reason. It had to be. Because,
without a doubt. Like the marketing, you got to think it actually probably pulled in people that just wanted to find out if it, what happened. This is so different type of movie.
Right.
Just off the information you could find from it.
So I don't really know if we wanted to wait until later, but I guess because we're talking about the marketing. Let's talk about the profit margin real quick. So I could never find a real deal amount of how much they spent to make this movie, like an actual finite amount, because I don't think they know. If somebody has it, okay, what was the actual amount?
Well,
Drew,
I
you
was
have it?
looking at an interview. I was looking at an interview
What
on
was
one
that?
of the directors. It was like 85K is what
Okay,
they
see,
spent.
this one says 60K. So we really don't
Yes.
know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
60 is what I heard too.
Yeah.
So
See, so there's really no good way to know. Well, so let's just say anywhere from $50 to $80,000. Well, it made $150 million. So it's set the record for profit margin in a theater movie all time, breaking Halloween '78's record. It's kind of funny that they're both horror films. That's kind of funny. But I mean, the marketing in this movie was huge, man. And I I can't really say enough that viewing this movie in hindsight, not getting to kind of experience that, I definitely get a little sad about that. I feel like I missed something. There's no doubt about it. And I remember it. Don't get me wrong. Like, I remember it. But again, I was a big giant pussy that wouldn't go watch it. So that's kind of what happened there.
If you actually would have looked, you could have Googled some of this is what I did when I was sitting there figuring out some of the ways we could talk about it. It's like if you actually Googled some of the newspapers, like local newspapers, how
Right.
they talking about this, there was so much back and forth between real or hoax. What's
Right.
this? How's this? Is this true? Where is movie making going from now? It was just so much hype, and I can still remember it. Still remember it.
Right. And to me, that is kind of why, I mean, and this is hindsight being older now. But if they tried to do this movie now, you couldn't do it.
Oh, it
One,
flopped.
there's too much internet. Two, you can't pull me into a movie thinking that you're going to really kill people on screen.
Mm-hmm.
But I understand in 98 and 99 why someone might, man, 98 and 99, wild time. You might really put some real deaths on the screen. Because, I mean, that's 98, 99 is kind of when true crime became started to really kind of set itself apart with A&E having their documentaries and stuff. So I feel like that makes more sense then than it does now. And the other found footage movie we talked about, Cannibal Holocaust, people thought they really did kill people on screen in that movie. I mean, they had a court case about it and everything. So I could see where they were coming from. But you mentioned true story or hoax. People going into this movie had no idea, not a clue. They thought it was real. Majority of people that sat down in their seat thought this movie was a real deal Holyfield.
Which
That's
I
kind of
believe
cool.
that's the draw for. I believe
Right.
that's the
Oh,
draw
that's a
for
great
it.
draw, by the way. Great idea, great marketing campaign. I'll stop rambling, let somebody else go. But like you said, you've talked about true story or hoax. I mean, hindsight, not real. But at the time, I totally understand why someone would think it was a true story. Great job marketing.
So let me ask you a question, Mike. Since on that, so do you feel like your ranking of this movie at the end would have reflected differently if you would have been caught up in the hype back then?
1000%. I get that way with other movies. So when we rank our Halloween series, the reason 2018 is so high is because I was watching and studying the stuff coming out about that movie for 2 years. Like, that's how long I was hooked. Kind of like Brian with Freddy versus Jason, where I'm following along, I'm waiting, it's finally here, it's finally here. It's number 2 for me because I'm still caught up in that hype. So yes, the long-winded answer.
Yeah, I'll go now. In the format Drew sent me, he basically asked us 2 questions to, kind of just explain how this movie was made, the marketing, how much it made. And the first question he asked me was the cost to make versus the return on investment. I'm just going to piggyback off of what Mike said.
You
The
have more
info,
notes.
the info I wrote down was they had a $60,000 budget, and I'm guessing the number I got. This is a worldwide number. It made
Holy
$248.6
shit.
million.
Yeah, you're right.
So,
Worldwide.
so
That's a great number.
see, and that's the thing. That's why a lot of horror movies honestly suffer so bad, like bad ones. Like we just did a bonus episode of the Friday the 13th rankings, and the reason that Jason Takes Manhattan wasn't in Manhattan more was because the budget was so low they couldn't go there. Because horror movies, above a lot of other genres, you can make them for dirt cheap and then make a huge profit off of them just because of the genre. You can use cheap tactics to make money off of it. I was going to read a little bit of pre stuff before I actually get into the full numbers. The Blair Witch Project premiered January 25th, 1999 at Sundance Film Festivals. Then there was a limited release on July 14th. Then it went worldwide on July 30th. The film earned $1.5 million in limited release weekend, and the third weekend that the movie was out, it made $29.2 million, and that's from being shown at 1,101 locations. That's in the third weekend, making $29.2 million. $29 million in 2019 in the first weekend is a huge weekend.
Right.
Outside of like your Marvel movies or
Right.
your Star Wars, like it, $29.2 million in 1999, and your third weekend is pretty incredible. And I actually have, I guess I'll use one of my fun facts now because I only watched this movie once. I didn't want to pay for the Prime Video again, so I kind of spent my day on YouTube watching, reviews, fun behind the scenes stuff. And I watched a film YouTuber. His name, I'm sure some of you heard of him. He's pretty big on there. His name is Chris Stuckman.
Yep.
He threw out a fun fact I thought was kind of cool, that one of the cameras that the cast members actually used, they actually took it back to Circuit City after they filmed this movie to get their
Cheap
money
ass
back.
motherfucker.
That's what I'm talking about.
That's good
talking
thrifty filmmaking, though.
So talking about thriftiness,
Right.
I respect it.
Yeah,
I mean,
me
heck,
too.
Circuit City's not even open no more.
I know. Oh,
And the second question that Drew gave to me to answer was, how do they come with a casting? And I'm just going to read up kind of the development before I found the casting. The only info I could find. Development of the Blair Witch Project began in 1993. While film students at University of Central Florida, Daniel Myrick and Eduardo Sanchez, they were inspired to make the film after realizing that they found documentaries on paranormal phenomena scarier than traditional horror films. They decided to create this film with a combination of both styles of those films. To produce the project, they had some friends join along, and they created I guess the company Haxon Films to produce this movie. Myrick and Sanchez, they developed a 35-page screenplay for their fictional film, and the whole dialogue is intended to just be improvised. And I got this information from mentalfloss.com as my source. I don't want to be plagiarized or nothing if anybody big hears this.
never know.
Actress Heather Donahue, she remembers reading an ad in Backstage magazine that said, "An improvised feature film shot in wooded location. It is going to be hell, and most of you reading this probably shouldn't come." So, first of all, before I get into the meat of that, I'm sure that probably scared away a bunch of people because they're not trying to be hiding in the woods. Not trying to they probably don't want to improvise at all either, because improv is kind of that's kind of a gift in my opinion.
It is.
I mean, it's not really something. I mean, you can teach it, I guess, but improv to me is just kind of it's a skill. But in order to test the improvisational skills of the candidates, as soon as each potential actor entered the room, he or she was immediately told by one of the directors, "You've been in jail for the last 9 years. We're the parole board. Why should we let you out?" If the actor or actress even hesitated for a moment, the directors concluded their audition. I think that's a pretty strict way of casting, your actors and actresses. I think that's pretty intense. I mean, I couldn't imagine, imagine walking into a job interview and you got to feed your family, pay your bills, and as soon as you sit down, you're just getting hit, boom, and you got to start answering. You don't even have the time to take a breath or nothing. That's pretty intense to me.
Yeah, I looked at a lot of the ways they how they done it. I didn't even hear that.
So my little section was a little bit about the legacy and how the movie changed horror. Obviously, this film is groundbreaking. It started the found footage genre, which is not, I mean, like we talked about a little bit earlier. I mean, there's not that many you can think of right off the top of your head, but it's probably a little bit more than you think. To mean, it's it's the 21st century's Exorcist. I mean, it really is a period film, like we talked about earlier. Like without the hype, without the is this real? It falls a little bit more flat than it would have then. I don't. Again, it's a period film. Well, I don't think we'll never have a Blair Witch again because even though the 2016 Blair Witch movie was great, I think it was great. It was it's an absolute follow up to this movie, an exact sequel to this movie. But we'll never have the same thing again because we'll never have early internet again. We'll never have message boards on dial up and AOL message boards going back and forth asking people, do you think it's real or do you think it's not? I was in 10th grade when this movie came out. So, I know for a fact we barely had AOL dial up. Somebody picked up the phone in the house and it was internet and you'd have a gigantic war in the house. Plus everybody believes the internet or believed the internet back then. Nowadays, everything's fake news. Nobody believes anything out there. So like Mike said, the marketing was amazing. And the biggest thing, I'll kind of go off a little bit here, but while you can argue that nothing really happens in the film, you can't argue the sense of realism and the acting of the three main cast members in this movie because their acting is tremendous.
Yes, the acting is great.
So you can't even argue that. I mean, surveys were done at Sundance and other places back then. Whether people really believed it or didn't believe it. And the majority of people believe that it was real. And that is not even an option. That would never, ever have happened if the performances on the screen weren't 100% believable.
100% agree. 100% agree. And like you said, no, nothing really happens. And that's another reason why we can't break it down scene by scene. Well, the final act, something kind of happens. But it does add to, and I could see it. So when I watch this movie, I always try to put myself back in a theater in 1999, the best that I can, and try to view it from that. Because if I just watch it now, it just looks like shaky home footage bullshit. I'm just keeping it real. But I understand how the realism makes it scarier in 1999 in sitting in a dark ass theater. Lights come down, shaky title screen comes up, says Blair Witch Project. Oh shit! Like. And so it starts out really real. The acting, it's really hard. I think it's probably harder than most people realize to play like you're not playing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, acting like you're not acting.
Yeah, to act like you're not acting is a really hard acting skill to do. And I think all three did it really well. I'm glad you said that, Brian, because I think the acting in this movie is great.
Hey, Mike, before anybody else goes, did any of y'all write the taco fun fact?
Say it.
Go. About the staying in character. All the three characters agreed during the filming to stay in character the whole time, like night, day, everything. Right. And the only time they could break character is when they use the code word taco. When they use the code word taco, that's when they broke character.
Taco is their safe word. I love it.
That's good though.
That's dedication to that's commitment, to the film. I give them props for that.
Dude, they used rations on their food. Like they sent them out to the woods and each day that passed, the rations got a little bit less, obviously. And so the experience, like what they're experiencing, what you're seeing is still real. Like, like this stuff surrounding the movie isn't real, but the acting you're seeing, you're in a movie, but some of that stuff you see is legitimate how they were feeling at that time.
Yeah, and I mean, even though they had a script, I mean, the actors, they used GPS trackers to find the instructions for what they were going to be doing for that day. Yep. They had waypoints programmed in these GPS units for the actors to go locate milk crates with 3 little plastic canisters in them, and each plastic canister contained notes on where the story was going for each actor who would not show the other 2 their paper. So at that point, they were free to improvise the dialogue. And I mean, that's groundbreaking, even for today's standards, much less, in 1999. So.
Yeah, because no matter what happened during the day, it was like, okay, I got to prepare for this. You didn't know what to prepare for. You were just like, oh, okay, this is what I'm doing now.
Yeah, I really just don't know what to. It definitely. I can understand it being hyped back then.
Right.
But
it's not good now.
I mean, I tried my best, to put myself in the theater, but it's a lot different being in the theater in 1999 watching this than instead of laying in your bed after a long day of work on Amazon Prime Video.
Yeah.
And Brian makes a good point, Nico. That the 2016 sequel is really good. Like it kind of takes the best stuff from the original and adds some good modern stuff to it to make it a better movie. Like it's shot better. There's some sound stuff they do better. The script to me is better, which is I know there's not a script per se, but the plot is better, at least to me. And it is a direct follow up to this original movie. So,
well, and it's like you said earlier, it's not just the Blair Witch 2016 one that does it better. Paranormal Activity did it better.
They do a great job. I love that movie.
And, and these movies do it without having to rely on people believing that it's real or not.
Right.
So it is definitely a period piece, but there's nothing before that. There was nothing for, Paranormal Activity had this movie to be like, okay, what'd they do right? What can I do? What can I do the same to do it? So it's, I think it's, and that's why I appreciate it so much. Again, like you said, it's different when you experienced it the way that I experienced it back then versus, trying to watch it for the first time now, which, 2016 was just 3 or 4 years ago. And that's, when that movie came out and it was great. So,
Right.
There's one thing that I've learned after doing this show with you guys is just about myself personally, but nostalgia really plays a big deal for me. And I really did not understand that until we started talking it out loud.
Right.
Like
1000%.
Like me and Brian had two totally different experiences with Freddy versus Jason. He was really disappointed with it, but I really loved it because of just our age difference and our understanding of what we were watching. So I tried to use that in my film rating of this, but I'm just judging it. I'm just judging this off what I watched the other night. I that's just me though.
Oh, I was just gonna say when I was sitting there watching it, we watched it Thursday night. My daughter, she's 13. She loves watching with me, and she's like, "What are we gonna watch tonight?" And I told her the Blair Witch, and then I kind of got pissed off at Carla because she's like, "Yeah, this was people that went out to the thing. They thought it was fake, but it really wasn't fake." I was like, "Why are you gonna sit there and bust it up right now?" I was like, "She doesn't know anything about this. She's just gonna sit there and watch it for the first time. You just gave it to her, and it made me so mad." But anyways, she watched.
Spoiler alert!
Exactly.
Spoiler.
Exactly. So we're sitting there watching it, and I kid you not, my daughter looks over to me. She goes, "Dad, this movie's lame." And I was like, "Okay,
it is rough."
I can understand that because it took a little while, watching it then watching it now. Like watching it back then, I would have, and you would have asked me to rank it, I would have probably did it like a 7.5.
Right. I am nowhere near that right now.
Easily would have done.
But I would rate the new one that high. I would. I absolutely would. So there is a difference between the two. Real quick, I wanted to hit on. I think, and I might have said this in our Scream episode. Maybe I did. I don't remember. But I think this movie kind of suffers from Scream syndrome, where there's been so much imitation of this movie and the "I'm so scared right now" scene, and so many different movies that it's a joke now. You know what I mean? And I think that, like Scream with Scary Movie, this movie kind of suffers from that being done so many damn times. Like, you don't even hardly remember the original. Half the time you remember the damn Scary Movie 2 with the snot bubble. Like, that's normally what a lot of people remember now instead of the actual scene. So I think it kind of hurts. That kind of hurts it as well. And that might just be me personally. But I've seen it imitated so many times. I'm like, okay, no scare here with me. I kind of laugh at some of the stuff.
Well, and that should speak to, hey, we're going to hype up 2016 Blair Witch, and Nico's going to be like, what the hell when he watches it?
I know.
Not near as good as
I really do think he'll like it.
I do think he will like this one.
But, that speaks to 2016 Blair Witch, whereas, they have to get through all those parodies of the Blair Witch Project, and, they do.
Right.
Nick, I'll pay for the $4 rental fee, dog.
But, Mike brought up a good point earlier about, this movie's effect on the genre. Because this movie really brought found footage back because, like you brought up earlier, Cannibal Holocaust was like the first found footage movie. It was, and Blair Witch suffered some of the same things, or not nearly to the extent, but like they were ready to arrest the director of Cannibal Holocaust. Like they legitimately thought like all the stars of that movie like were either dead or gone. They actually had to like find them and bring them to the court, to the court hearing, just for them to prove that the guys from Cannibal Holocaust weren't dead.
Right.
I mean, this movie really brought this genre. It brought it back to life. I mean, it's not Halloween. Halloween was the birth of the slasher, in my opinion.
Of course.
But Cannibal Holocaust, was kind of like the birth of found footage. But I know it's kind of weird maybe to compare this to Jesus, but but the Blair Witch Project is kind of like the resurrection of it, maybe.
Right. No, that's right. No, that's a apt comparison because Cannibal Holocaust did shit on it. You're right.
But I mean, they both suffer. Like I said, they both suffer the same things. They thought, like Mike brought up, like Heather's mom got sympathy cards, thinking her daughter was dead. But I just think that's interesting how I mean, this movie is a genre changer. I'm not going to discredit it for that. But,
right. No, I mean, right. You compared it to Halloween, Nico. Halloween's not the first slasher, but it was the best done slasher at the time.
Oh yes,
it was the one. It was the best, the most well done one. So it is the grandfather of slasher. Like you can throw Black Christmas in there, but most people don't remember Black Christmas like that. They remember Halloween '78. So kind of like with this, a lot of people don't remember Cannibal Holocaust unless you're kind of a film junkie or saw it or you've seen it since, which is actually kind of hard to find. I didn't know that, so I tried to watch it one time. This is not hard to find. Most people know this movie, but like a lot.
I borderline barely even consider Cannibal Holocaust even a horror movie. I consider it more of like a documentary style.
Film,
yeah,
man.
A snuff documentary type.
Yeah, it's a snuff film.
But yeah, it definitely. I guess it's the first maybe horror found footage film, maybe you can say. But I don't. That's just my opinion.
Right.
That's just my opinion on Cannibal Holocaust. I mean, I've never seen it, but I've watched reviews on it and ranking of most disturbing movies and all that. Brian, do you want to knock out your fun facts and I'll go, then Mike can rant?
Sure.
It's just a small rant.
We may have some of the same stuff wrote down too. So I'll just cross mine off if you read yours first. Go ahead.
Okay. So a lot of the big complaints about this movie from some people is that the Blair Witch is not in this movie. Mm-hmm. But actually, the Blair Witch was supposed to be in the movie because apparently there's a scene where Heather and is it Mike runs out of the tent screaming, what the fuck was that? Well, the cameraman's supposed to pan to the left to show a woman in a white dress on the hill, which is the Blair Witch, but he never really panned over enough for them to do that, and then they never reshot it. So I think that if you, and I've seen still screenshots, I've never taken the time to do it myself, of the very end scene when they're in the basement, that you're supposed to be able to pause it just right and maybe see some sort of shadowy figure of the Blair Witch, but I've never done that, never seen anything except those screenshots on the internet. But like I said, you can believe everything on the internet. So
right.
The teeth in the twigs were actually human teeth.
Yeah.
They were supplied by was it Eduardo Sanchez's dentist. The hair was Josh's actual real hair as well. And that is it for me.
All right.
You read off my two, so go ahead, Nico. He read off both the ones I had.
Okay. So I wrote 5 of them down. One of them we already said about Heather's mom receiving sympathy cards. The first one I have is it took 8 days to shoot the film, but 8 months to edit it. They had 19 to 20 hours of footage. Then it was trimmed down to 2.5 hours. And the scenes that were not used in the theatrical release were used for the faux documentary on Sci-Fi and on the website. The 3 actresses were paid $1,000 a day. The sign to Burkittsville has been stolen 3 times, one of which was on the opening night of the movie. And the last fun fact that I have wrote down is Heather told Fangoria magazine that the final scene was so terrifying for her, she kept hyperventilating and crying long after the shoot was over.
Wow.
That's pretty interesting.
That's
So
crazy.
Nico, so to follow off of that, did you happen to see did they get any royalties off this movie? Or was it just $1,000 a day? That was it.
No, they got plenty of royalties.
Yeah, I'm about to say they're probably still getting them, dude.
Okay, well, I was just wondering. I was kind of wondering if maybe you knew that or not.
Okay, I will do my best not to take too long. So when I get bored, I like to go down rabbit holes on YouTube sometimes if I ever had the time. And one of those rabbit holes I go down are movie theories. You know, like the 10 crazy movie theories fans made up, stuff like that. I like to go down that rabbit hole. And I found one a long time ago that kind of changes the way I view this movie. And I think it's really good, and it's actually really well thought out. Okay, so I'm going to try to just do some bullet points. The theory is that Josh and Mike are the killers, that there is no Blair Witch. I think there's a lot of good evidence to actually support this. Okay, for one, we never see the witch, and I know she was supposed to be in the film, but we never see the witch. Okay, so that kind of helps out a little bit as far as we never actually see what this shadowy thing looks like. So that kind of helps. They used the urban legend of the witch to lure Heather out there, and you're kind of wondering why would they lure Heather? Well, if you go on the website from back in the day, and they have those journals and diaries, she mentions, or the person that writes these as Heather mentions the fact that her and Josh have a pre-existing friendship / maybe kind of a relationship that didn't quite work out. And then Mike, we see in the movie, Mike's a total fucking stranger. She doesn't know Mike. Okay. Okay. But she does know Josh, and there could be some bad blood there. Maybe. Okay. This kind of works for my theory, so I'm going to use it. So that kind of helps. Okay. And then you get to the map scene where Mike kicks the map, or we don't know what happened to the map, but she thinks that Josh was the last one to have the map. Well, Josh says, no, I gave it back to you. And that, by the way, that scene is dog shit. If we're talking about scenes that suck, where's the map? Where's the map? Okay. Anyway, but we find out Mike kicks the map. Why would Mike kick the map? I know maybe you're being led to believe they're possessed, but to me, seems more logical that they're in on the plot to kill this girl. That's kind of where I'm coming from with Mike kicking the map. So then they're using the compass. Well, who has the compass? Mike, the guy who kicked the map into the river. They're following Mike's directions now. Well, Mike's leading them down a path to this house. Okay. And by the way, I'll cover the sound effects really quick. So the sound stuff that you hear, the cackling and the, the outside stuff. Well, guess who the sound guy is? Mike. Guess when all this stuff happens? When they're asleep, or when Heather's asleep. Okay. So scratch that one off. You see the piles of rocks? Is that really supernatural, or is that Mike and Josh piling up stones outside the tent? I'm just saying. You think about that, okay? I talked about the diary, okay? I talked about all the stuff happening. And by the way, Heather is suspicious of Mike and Josh in this movie. She kind of points it out, where flames are licking you like it says, flames are licking you like the devil there, Josh. Like, trying to insinuate that something might be going on here, because there is a point where Mike and Josh's mood change, where everyone's flipping out. We lost the map, and now Mike and Josh are cool. And Heather's like, y'all are having way too much fun with this, man. What's going on here? Okay. The end to me is really is what seals the deal. So they lure Heather into the house. They're kind of like, come on, Heather. Okay. Well, we lose Josh, or is it Mike that we lose? So I get the two freaking confused. But we lose one of them. They're supposedly dead. Okay, hair and teeth could easily be anybody's hair and teeth that they had. It could literally be anything. So I'm not going to count. Again, we see the other one later on. So as we're going into the house, they lead her up the stairs. Why would they do that? Well, it's the furthest damn thing away from the cellar. For one of them to get down there into the cellar and hide. And then all of a sudden you hear noise, and the other one takes off and leaves Heather upstairs. And they're kind of falling down, and the camera's kind of falling around. And the next thing you see, so Josh is dead, right? So Mike disappears. You see his camera fall. Mike disappears. But then he's standing in a corner. And then someone comes up from behind and sneak attacks Heather. Now, what makes more sense? Them being possessed by a witch, or this being a huge plot where Mike lures her in, standing in the corner, and right there behind her is Josh, who's not ever really dead. By the way, what gets him to go into this house is Josh's screams.
Mm-hmm.
So it's either a witch or it's Josh. It's one or the other. So to me, and by the way, the reason they filmed it is it looks like all three of them are dead. They leave the film to be found and they get the hell out of town. And that's a good cover up for people that don't want to be found. Oh, they're dead. Oh, well, too bad. Boom. Theory. Shut. I think Mike and Josh are the killers, which doesn't exist.
I think that's it's definitely plausible theory until I think 2016 Blair Witch.
I know
shoots
it
a lot of
does.
holes in that though, because of all the
you're right.
paranormal stuff you see.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. 2016 is a really good sequel because it does help this film. But if you just look at that standalone movie, and by the way, even the director kind of commented on, we don't really know what happened at the end there. So to me, if we're just looking at that original film, could easily be Josh and Mike are just murderers, man. That's all I'm saying. Okay, I'm done. I've said my piece.
All I learned from your little theory there is I'm never going to trust Mike ever again.
What did I do?
Sounds like Kevin Williamson wrote this film, though. By the way, exactly how you just played that out. That's why you like it so much.
It's a movie within a movie, pal. What can I say? I don't care what y'all say. Josh and Mike, fuck you. Team, fuck you.
Oh.
Wow. Hey, Mike, are those your two go to hell characters?
Oh, absolutely. Dude, Josh and Mike are the worst in this movie. They kick them out. Dude, they suck.
Yeah.
Oh, God, they could go to hell.
Terrible. Hey, Drew, if them two is going to keep going, I was going to say y'all keep going because I ain't seen 16. I could barely watch this first one, so y'all just have at it. I'm just listening now.
No, I'm good now. No, I'm good. Let's go.
No, I mean, it's great. I never even ventured down the road of like the conspiracy theory behind these. So like I wouldn't even. So with you telling me that was like a whole new learning thing for me. Just
me too.
Hearing
there's videos.
I never went down that road with it.
Right, there's videos that do a better job than me. I guess you can check those out. But that's just kind of the general synopsis. Is they lure her into the woods. They make it seem like it's the Blair Witch. And I mean, she wants to be a documentary filmmaker. She is a documentary filmmaker, so they use that against her. Oh, why don't you document this urban legend? And then they kind of lure her into the woods, lure her into the house, and just kill her. I guess the one big poke a hole could be they could have just lured her into the woods and chopped her up into a bunch of little pieces and killed her. I guess that's kind of the hole you could poke through it. But that's not as fun. Josh and Mike are the killers. Peace out.
Do you guys want to jump into our ratings?
Yeah, I'm totally with that.
And do our favorite kills. Oh wait.
This is our first review without one.
No, it's not the first review without one.
Amityville kind of did at the beginning, but we didn't pick nothing just because.
Well, I mean, it was at the very beginning. The whole family got killed. So, I mean,
yeah.
If we rated our favorite kill, we'd probably be a bit disturbed.
Oh, we did rate our favorite kill, though, I think. I'm like 90% sure we ended up rating it. Not that it matters.
I'll go first with my rating. I'll go ahead and shit all over this movie real quick. All right. So if there's any Blair Witch Project super fans, anybody in the Drew and Brian generation, I'm really not trying to piss y'all off or nothing, but this is just 28-year-old me reviewing it, who didn't watch this movie until December 2019. This is what I wrote down. I did not see the film in all of its glory when it released in theaters. I didn't see it when it was hyped. I didn't see it when there was, marketing about these actors and actresses missing. So I wasn't a part of that. I mean, I was in second grade maybe when this movie came out.
You were 8,
yeah,
bro.
I mean, yeah, I don't.
Just went 20 years this year.
I don't remember I was doing at 8 years old. I wasn't watching Blair Witch or worried about the marketing of this movie. I'm not a huge found footage film fan, honestly. I wrote this may have been scary and horrifying in 1999, but in 2019 it just felt like a waste of an hour and 20 minutes to me. The only scene I even somewhat liked was Heather's crying monologue, but even after that, it just cuts to another scene in the woods with all three of them. So it kind of just It had me there, then it just lost me right after that. I said it was a genre changer, true, but it does nothing for me personally.
Especially if you weren't alive.
Of,
if you weren't really alive and kicking that much during the genre, then it doesn't really make a difference how much it changed.
I wouldn't go. I wouldn't go out of my way to rewatch this ever again. And in my opinion, it's just a 1 hour and 20 minute shaky camera of nothing. I gave the movie a 4 out of 10, and this is why I gave it a 4. I gave it 1 point for the creativity from the two directors of making it. I do give them credit for the 35 pages and all that. I give them 1 point for the 3 actors and actresses. They did a good job of acting and improvising. I gave it 1 point for Heather's monologue because I did like it. And I gave it 1 point for its effect on the genre. So I gave it a 4 out of 10.
That's decent enough with it. Like with me, my rankings on this one is kind of like the last show we had with Brian. The duo ranking. You got your 99 ranking, and then you got your now ranking. And 99, I would give this easily a 7.5. Easily. But the way we talk about ranking on this show with us together is, staying power. Do you get that same feeling from 1999 to 2019, 20 years later? Obviously, I didn't get that same feeling, and I ranked it a 5.0 now.
A little better than me.
Right.
Brian, you want to go ahead and go? We'll let Mike go last since he picked the movie.
Yeah, I did.
Okay, sure. And I agree with Drew as far as, a ranking back then would be different than a ranking today. But I'm going to rank it a little bit higher just because of I have a lot of nostalgia for the movie. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'll just say it. I have a lot of nostalgia for it. And so it just watching it again I almost didn't rewatch it because if this tells you anything, I watched this movie 20 something years ago I guess it was exactly 20 years ago now.
October. It was in October come out.
In the theater in 10th grade with one of my girlfriends at the time. And I remembered just about every single thing about it, and I almost didn't rewatch it. But I was like, yeah, you know what? I'll rewatch it. So I rewatched it again, and I was right. I remembered every single thing about this movie. So take that for good or bad. But I'm gonna rank it a 6. Mm-hmm. So which is a little bit higher probably than everybody else. If I had to probably be honest, and that's basically just on nostalgia.
Well, I was not expecting you to say 6, Brian. I was expecting you to say 7 or 8 when you said I remembered it from when I first saw it. I had nostalgia, and then you said 6. I was like, well, okay, then.
You felt better, didn't you, Nico? You felt better.
a little bit, yeah.
Hey, Brian, quick question. Was the lady friend you took to the movies to see that? Was that your now wife, or was that somebody else?
Somebody else. Let's see. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Mine now would have been in 5th grade.
Mike, you ready to drop that rating on us? Hey, before that, I forgot to ask you, why did you pick the movie? Give us that too before you give us your rating. I forgot to ask you that, brother.
So the reason I picked the movie is because we were trying to do a couple different things before we got back into slashers. Correct.
And so we
done possession, we done vampires. And so I was like, well, we haven't done found footage. And while my favorite found footage movie is the very first Paranormal Activity, it's a little bit with the fourth kind. But either way, I was like, let's just go ahead and do The Grandfather. Let's go ahead and do the Godfather of all found footage horror movies and do the Blair Witch. That's literally what it was. It's not a movie I picked because I love it. It's a movie I picked because I feel like if we're going to cover a wide variety of genres within horror subgenres, then might as well start with the granddaddy of them all. And so that's why I picked the movie. And so I was like, it's something different for us too. I didn't know how much we'd like it. None of us really love it. I think that's pretty clear.
Different times. At different times, I loved it back in '99. Loved it then.
I'm going to give it a 4.5. Not because I don't like it, but because it doesn't hold up well to me. Mm-hmm. I like the idea, the premise of the movie, although it's a little faulty because, that. Anyway, that's not important. But I do like the plot of the movie. I think that it's been done better since, and that kind of drops it down. The sequel from 2016 is better. That drops it down. And the in-home experience just is not the same as it probably would have been in a 1999 movie theater. So I don't have that nostalgic pull towards it. So that's all the reasons why it's at a 4.5. It's not something that I'm going to rewatch a whole lot. Maybe every now and then to show somebody else the movie. That's about it. So it's a 4.5 for me.
Go ahead, Brian.
Well, yeah, and I would have probably given it a 0.5 or even an 8 had the 2016 Blair Witch not shown me how much better it could have actually been done.
Yeah.
Same here, by the way.
And I will give that movie a 7.5 or 8 if I watched it right now. So
Yeah,
that says a lot about that. But it affected the original a lot more than I expected it to, I guess.
I really can't wait until Nico sees that movie and comes back to our group text and shits all over it.
Yeah, I know. Especially after I built it up so much.
I know, all of us.
Yeah, all of us.
It's on
I
Prime.
missed
and
it,
it's
Brian.
free.
Y'all notice that the two that actually were there for the original, like watching it in its original glory, gave it higher reviews than the two guys that didn't watch it in the original glory.
To quote the great Donna Godot, barely.
Barely.
You gave it 1 point higher than me, Drew.
Well, mine was strictly because of the staying power. That was the only reason I couldn't rank all these other movies saying, the staying power didn't go well, and then turn around and say, just because I loved this one when it first come out, changed my whole rating system just for this one movie.
Hey, Drew, let me ask you a question. Last week you gave 30 Days a Night 2 rankings, a horror ranking and a regular movie ranking.
Mm-hmm.
Are there 2 different ratings for this movie? Because I can argue that this isn't even a horror movie because not shit happened at the end.
Yeah, I mean, this is a.
I mean,
This is probably more of a.
is true,
I
nothing
think
happened.
I think it's more of like a horror suspense movie, just because nobody dies. I guess in it doesn't make it not a horror movie.
I definitely
I think
say.
I think you could probably put this under like 6 categories. Really, honestly,
I would definitely say
itself.
it's a horror subgenre. Like
Yeah,
I would
I mean,
definitely
it's not
say
like
it
the
falls into a
main
horror.
one
Right.
going off of, but yeah, it's still that's the reason. I mean, yeah,
It
I
changed
don't-
horror a
I
little
don't
bit.
consider vampire movies horror movies. That's just that's
Well,
my.
it depends on the plot. Like obviously, Twilight
You
isn't.
call
but
Underworld is Underworld a horror movie to you, though?
No,
Eh,
I don't
It's
consider
more
it.
action, I think.
yeah, it's more of an action
That's
thriller.
kind of where I'm coming from with that. Like last week's, that's my
Right.
thing.
Right.
And I didn't
Right.
shit on the movie. I liked the movie. I
Right.
enjoyed the movie. I'm just
Right.
not a big vampire movie.
Right. I'm not either. And to be fair, I think that this is almost like I've said before, where like Saw kind of changed horror into something else in 2002 or 3, whatever year that was. This, I'll always say a lot of them were very Scream-like, but this kind of broke it up a little bit in the late 90s where we weren't getting Scream. I know you did last summer, The Faculty and all that stuff. Here comes something a little different. I still think it falls under the horror. It falls under the horror umbrella in a subgenre, just a found footage subgenre. Like
No, I agree. I
right,
agree.
right.
I was just being, that guy, had to be.
You should though,
difficult about
because
Nico is
You
like
should.
like Drew. Explain yourself.
you should though, Nico, because Drew does that every week. Is this really a horror? Every week.
Not every week. I mean,
Yeah,
I didn't do
every
it on the
week.
movie I picked.
Well, of course you didn't do the one you picked. Some
No.
bitch.
We're gonna find the one movie that Drew thinks is a horror film.
He already
One day.
has.
One
We
day.
already have.
So,
It's Amityville
I think-
Horror.
I think the biggest thing y'all forget
Because it's
is
in
like
the title.
I hold horror to like a really high bar. I think because I loved it so much because my grandmother gave me that love for it. So like when it comes to like certain movies, like there's gonna be some that I'm gonna rank really high because I love, and I'm not gonna tell you which ones those are because you have to listen to find that out.
So, all right, Mike. Appreciate you making us watch this shitty movie. We had to get it. We had to get it out of the way. Just kidding, brother.
brother.
Just kidding.
Hey, it's okay with me, man. It ain't like every movie that everyone's picked so far has been my favorite thing ever. So,
No, I feel you. And honestly, we're gonna have to review movies we don't like and movies we love. We can't only do one.
I'm telling. And Nico,
go ahead, brother.
before the end of 2020, I want to review Freddy's Dead. So we have a good hour and 15-minute shit fest about one of the worst horror movies ever made. Okay, thanks.
Lord.
But like I said, I can't remember if it was
said,
last week or the week before. You know, we're all picking a movie each week, and then next week's movie we're doing is my pick. I'm going to pick kind of a different movie as well. I don't really consider this a slasher film. I consider this, Drew's movie was, kind of like a haunting movie. Brian picked a vampire movie. Mike picked a found footage. I consider this kind of a home invasion type of horror movie.
Yep.
I don't really consider it a slasher. The sequel to it, you might start calling it a slasher.
Yeah.
But the movie I picked is 2008's The Strangers. I felt like watching a good movie for once and reviewing a good movie.
We'll talk about it.
Yeah, we will. But my movie pick is The Strangers. I really enjoy this movie. It's got a lot of the same nostalgia that Amityville Horror has with Drew.
Right.
I'm really looking forward to it. I appreciate you guys doing the show with me. I think Brian is about to pass out from having a newborn child.
Yep.
We all truly appreciate all of you guys tuning in. Go check us out on all of our social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Give us a 5-star rating. And we have a trivia question for you guys. And this isn't really a very hard trivia question. So Drew, how do you want to answer? Tweet us? You want us to tweet us?
Tweet us, Instagram. It doesn't matter. Whoever's the first to DM it anywhere or even add us is fine too.
The first correct answer on social media. Who was our guest on the Friday the 13th rankings episode? Who was our guest? Give us his name and you win a free t-shirt. That's all you have to do. It's not hard at all.
Oh, okay.
But I appreciate you guys listening to us. We all really, truly love talking about these movies. And just want to remind everybody to don't go out there.